full house. Good evening, everyone. Is everyone awake? Good evening. My name is Noemi from the Women's Advisory Board. I'm the chair, and at this time I want to join my fellow members, Sylvia Salguero, Deborah D'Amico, Amanda Smash-Hyde, Karen Ayers, Tina Moore, and Nadia Sutton. A little photo op, 1 second, please. All right. So the City of West Hollywood's Women's Advisory Board advises the West Hollywood City Council on policies and other issues pertaining to women, advocates on behalf of women's rights, and provides programming addressing women's concerns. In short, we're appointed to represent the women of West Hollywood and welcome your feedback and participation. Also joining us is Martha Wheelock, who serves on the board of the National Women's History Project, our co-sponsor of tonight's program. Welcome. For everyone in the audience and folks watching at home, you're invited to join the conversation on Twitter and Facebook using hashtag WeHo and hashtag Women's Equality Day. The work of a board and great city events such as tonight would not be possible without the city and leadership of the West Hollywood City Council. Please welcome Mayor Lauren Meister, Mayor Pro Tem John Heilman, Councilmember John D'Amico, Councilmember John Duran, and Councilmember Lindsay Horvath.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Because I'm a woman, I will tell you that my underwear does match my sash, but you're going to have to take my word for that. You've met my colleagues, and I thank everyone for being here. We're going to have a very interesting program, and you know, I'm a little bit of a geek, so I found this website, National Women's History Project, and every year they talk about National Women's History Month, and this year, the theme for 2016 is honoring women who have shaped America's history and its future through their public service and government leadership. So I want to say thank you. Although often overlooked and undervalued, collectively they have dramatically influenced our public policy in the building of viable institutions and organizations. From championing basic human rights to ensuring access and equal opportunity for all Americans, they have led the way in establishing a stronger and more democratic country. Each of these public leaders succeeded against great odds. The diversity of their experiences demonstrates both the challenges and the opportunities women in public service have faced. Their ability to use the art of collaboration to create inclusive solutions and nonpartisan policies, as well as their skill and determination, serve to inspire future generations. The tenacity of each honoree underlines the fact that women from all cultural backgrounds in all levels of public service and government are essential in the continuing work of forming a more perfect union. And that is the theme, working to form a more perfect union, honoring women in public service and government. And so the 2016 National Women's History Month honorees, and I'll go through these quickly: Sister Mary Madonna Ashton, Public Health Leader and Minnesota Commissioner of Health; Daisy Bates, Civil Rights Organizer, Leader of the Little Rock School Integration; Sonia Pressman Fuentes, now co-founder, first woman attorney in the Office of the General Counsel at the EEOC, that's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission; Isabel Gonzalez, champion of Puerto Rican securing American citizenship; Ella Grasso, Governor of Connecticut, first woman governor of any U.S. state elected in her own right; Susan Schoen Harjo, Native American public policy advocate and journalist. Judy Hart, National Park founding superintendent of Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Historical Park and Women's Rights National Historical Park. Oveta Culp Hobby, World War II Director of the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps and First Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Barbara Mikulski, longest-serving woman in the U.S. Congress. Karen Narasaki, civil and human rights leader, civil rights lawyer, lobbyist, and leader who has dedicated her career to issues of Asian American equality. Nancy Grace Roman, chief of astronomy at NASA. Bernice Sandler, women's rights activist and godmother of Title IX. I want to be a godmother of something. Nadine Smith, LGBT civil rights activist and executive director of Equality Florida. Dorothy C. Stratton, World War II director of the SPARS, which is the Coast Guard Women's Reserve, first full dean of women at Purdue University and executive director of the Girl Scouts of the USA. Betty Mae Patuthke Tiger Jumper, first woman elected chairperson of the Seminole tribe, becoming the first female tribal chief in North America. And Inez Milholland, women's suffrage leader and martyr. Women's suffrage leader Milholland gave her life working for the women's suffrage movement, and that's what we're going to be seeing a film about tonight. So enjoy the program, and I know afterwards we'll have a panel, and Councilmember Horvath will be moderating that panel. Thank you all for coming. It's very nice to see you here tonight, and happy Women's Equality Day.
All right. Isn't our council member awesome? I love them. Also joining us tonight is Pamela Marchello from the office of Congressman Adam Schiff's office, and I want to welcome her to give us some words. Okay, let me fix that for you. There you are.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much, Naomi. I know you're going to hear this tonight, but what a great time we live in. Even though the presidential election is a little nutty, I'm feeling like we could potentially have the first female president. So how great would that G8 meeting be with 3 women leaders? Germany, UK, and the United States. How amazing is that? So I just saw on one of the slides, Mississippi didn't ratify the 19th Amendment until 1984. This is astonishing to me. So I want to just say this, that the Senate has women that are running for office. There's a 50-50 thing in 2050 to have 50 women senators by 2050. So I want to encourage any woman out there to start thinking about running. We need more women at the table, more women in the conversation to make this country more compassionate. You know, we need really good conversations around a lot of issues that we're not getting because women are not at the table. And I just want to say one thing about Congressman Schiff's office, and then I'll leave you, is that Congressman Schiff really supports women. In his office in Burbank, there are 7 staffers that are women out of 8, right? And the district director and the deputy district director are both women. So Congressman Schiff is pro-woman. And that's all I want to say. And thank you so much for inviting me. Such an amazing day, and it's such an amazing time to be a woman and be in this country today, because we're going to do it. Thank you so much.
Now I get to introduce the person responsible for the film you're about to see, filmmaker Martha Wheelock.
Thank you, West Hollywood, for allowing us to basically premiere this film to such a lovely and supportive audience, and to let the voice of Inez Milholland be heard, to let the work of our great suffrage sisters be known. Just a couple of words about this film. I was inspired by the Southern Poverty Law Center, who distributes their films on Selma, the Bridge to the Ballot, on Rosa Parks, gives them away to schools and libraries and groups. And I said to myself, isn't that wonderful? Because people aren't going to probably order them and pay money for them anyway. But if they happen to get a film for free, wouldn't that be great? So what I've done, with the help of Kickstarter, is to get enough money to be able to give this film free to anybody who would sign up for it, and who will spread the history to schools, to libraries, to your family members. And after the film, you can go to our table out there, sign up with your email address, and you can have your own copy. And then just spread it around and make sure that every person that you know sees it and casts her vote, because that's what this is really about. So that's the first thing I wanted to say, is that, and the Women's History Project is a wonderful group. If you've ever just want to go and get inspired by some of the history which has been revealed here today, support them. And there's a silent auction, as you know, that you can get to see. And I'm not sure exactly when we're pulling the tickets, but the raffle is fabulous, and that'll go on. And I'll pull the ticket after the panel. And then I just want to add with one more final touch. You know, making a film about history demands that we use history. We use newspapers, we use papers, we use flyers, we find old photographs. And that's what this film is consistent of. But then I found, out of the dust of a real actress, I found a voice of Inez Milholland. And so after the film, in the dark, you will be given the great opportunity to hear Inez Milholland's last speech, a fragment of that speech that she delivered here in Los Angeles. And I want you to go forward into light, out of the darkness, and stand on the shoulders of Inez, and always cast your vote. Thanks for being here.
The dominant political party, the Democratic Party, has the power to liberate the women of the United States. But they have refused to exercise that power on our behalf, and on behalf of liberty and of freedom. 14 times President Wilson has refused his help and support. If democracy means anything, it means a right to the voice, a voice in the government. Women are as deeply concerned as men on the matters in our country. Whether we are to have a civil or militaristic future is of deepest moment to us. It is impossible for any problem that confronts our nation today to be decided accurately or justly, while half the people are excluded from its consideration. To believe that we have no part in determining national events is to believe that women are not human beings. We know, and must help to decide whether our sons are to be trained to peace or war. We say to the government, you shall not educate our children to citizenship or soldierdom without our wisdom and advice. You shall no longer make laws that burden us with taxes and high prices, or that regulate our lives, our homes, our transportation, and education of children, until we are free to act with you. This is our demand. This is why we place suffrage before all other national issues. This is why we ask women to rise in revolt against that party that has ignored the pleas of women for self-government, and against any party that ignores the claims of women until we win. Women of the West, you who possess the vote, use it on behalf of women. Will you take this stand? Will you make this fight? Will you battle for your fellow women who are not yet free? We have no one but you to depend on. Men have made it plain that they will fight for us only when it is worth their while. And you must make it worth their while. It is only for a little while. Soon, the battle will be over. Victory is in sight. It depends upon how we stand in this coming election, united or divided, whether we shall win, and whether we shall deserve to win. We have no money of our own, no elaborate organization, no one interested in our success, except anxious-hearted women all over the country who cannot come to the battle line themselves. Here and there, in factory and in farmhouse, by the fireside, in hospitals and schoolrooms, wherever women are sorrowing and working and hoping, they are praying for our success. Only the hopes of women have we, and our own spirit, and a mighty principle. Women of these states unite. We have only our chains to lose, and a whole nation to gain. Together we shall stand shoulder to shoulder for that mighty principle, the right of self-government. President Wilson, how long must women wait for liberty?
Is it on? Oh, there we go. I'd now like to invite our panelists to come up and join me. Okay, so 5-minute warning on the silent auction. Anyone who's watching items, you have a 5-minute warning. Also, raffle tickets are continuing to be sold, and the numbers will be called here after the panel discussion. Okay? Are we all here? Oh my God, I'm in the company of greatness among these women. You have no idea. I'm just like fangirling right now. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And Amy, you gave Inez a voice for us. Thank you. Let's give her another round of applause. So incredible. And living with someone's story, I want to ask this question of both you and of Martha. Living with someone's story as you have with Inez's story, what have you learned about her? What's the most surprising thing you've learned about her and getting to know her and the work that she's done?
She was zesty. She had this open marriage with Eugène Beausevin, who she proposed to. I mean, she was really a woman ahead of her time, is what they say, ahead of her time. She was a woman of her time, and of all time, I think. So her story, her ideals of liberty and equality, I think, are powerful, just as powerful now as they were then.
Truly. And I forgot to mention that Amy is, as you saw her performance today, she also voices Inez in the film, and she's been featured on TEDx, The Today Show, NPR, Inside Edition, and she has her own YouTube channel where you can continue to follow her creative work. So thank you for being with us tonight, Amy.
An honor.
Now, Martha,
Yes.
I can't believe you made this film. I've known you for, I don't want to say how many years, but this is absolutely a work of art, and it's so moving. You've also lived with Inez's story. What have you found most surprising about her, and what's something that we should absolutely know about her before we leave tonight?
She impressed me because of a journey that she took through being a young woman and finding her own ideals, being influenced by a very philanthropic father, a very liberal father, co-founded the NAACP. And I saw her, first of all, as somebody who was multi-movement. She had labor, she had legal rights for women. She worked in all the things we showed you here, with pickets and striking and pacifism. She was on the Henry Ford peace trip. She was a journalist. She was everything. And she saw that movements really do come together, especially in this case, as Amy portrayed, under the banner of suffrage. When you have suffrage, when you have a voice in the government, everything else goes under that, basically. And I also noticed that she was what we would call marketed by her beauty, because she was such a beautiful person, and all the people who wanted the right to vote were those women with hair and beards and all, they made fun of them. They had caricatures of suffragists, and so Inez was sent out to be the poster child, and she was dramatic and beautiful and everything, and yet she wanted to be known as beautiful women do, for her intellect and for her civil involvement, and yet she continued to do this because it was for a cause greater than herself. And I was at the VA today, and I was talking about how when she married Eugène Beausevin, she gave up basically her citizenship. That was the wife had to become the citizen of the person she married. And so all of this work for suffrage, for her right to vote in this country, she couldn't have even voted. So all of this was beyond the personal. It was greater than the self. And that's what impressed me, the selflessness, the dedication, her indefatigability. When you read the chronicles of her trips, I don't know how she lived on 2 or 3 hours a day, but in these conditions on trains and funny little hotels and stuff like that. At one time she wanted to take a sleeper, and the suffrage group said, "No, you can't do that. That's too upper class. You better go sleep in the trains, in the regular train thing." And she did. So she had some money at one time, but she really, really, really didn't want to use that in any way to be influential. So.
Yeah, and she came from money.
Yeah.
And to give all that and go work in Sing Sing prison to free people who were wrongly accused, I just was reading again today, when she lived as a kid in London and was working with the suffragettes there, and women were paid there were women who were sewing the covers on tennis balls, just to give you a little fact, and for a dozen of them, they were paid a penny and a half for a dozen. And that was, I don't know what percentage of what the men were paid for the same work. But this went into her I'm still like so shaken from just being in there. My words are failing me, but hers did not. And she kept going. Even after she fainted on that day and they revived her, an hour later, as they waited, this packed house, she came back in a chair to finish this speech.
Wow.
And Martha just told me her teeth were rotting. And she had this autoimmune deficiency she didn't know about before she even started on this tour.
Wow.
So she was exhausted. And she had just come back from Italy, where she was a peace correspondent during the war. All this before 30, by 30.
Yeah.
It's incredible. You both have brought her story to life in such a profound way. Martha, how did you choose what you actually put, as a filmmaker, how did you choose what actually made it into the short, and what does that cutting room floor look like? I mean, I can only imagine. It sounds like there are so many stories that, we've yet to discover of her.
You mean like why Inez, or how the film was made?
Well, I think, how did you choose the moments of her story and the life that you told here, and what are some of the moments that didn't make it but made her?
Well, it could have been a much longer film. Some people wish that it were a longer film, probably like a Ken Burns type of film. But I really was concentrated on making it a contemporary, emotional story. She only had she had 30 years, so it's the size is not equal to what she did in that time, but. And of course, you're limited in making a documentary film by what's available. There's no stock footage except a very rare, wonderful piece of her actually on a horse. That's actually she on that horse in the stock footage. And we had photographs, and my friend Zoe here did some wonderful archival research and newspapers and stuff. So you kind of make a film with what you can have, and then you pick the arc from that. And so it was a great blessing. I felt like I was every morning, and I'm sure Amy feels this when she inhabits you. Oh, I just got to get that one piece where she turns around a little so that I can have something to cut to. And it wasn't there, so you had to do something else of invention. And I had a wonderful narrator named Libby West, who did all the other voices, and she was in my other film called California Women Win the Vote, which was a story of how California women won the vote in 1911.
Incredible.
The other powerful thing about this length is that it's shareable. It will be released digitally. Is that correct?
At some point, yeah, right.
Yeah, and the call to action in the end is so exciting to me, because this is love and light. This is something political that we can share with love and light that inspires people to vote and to share their voice, and that is exciting to me.
It's really true. And Martha is the executive director of Wild West Women, Inc., a nonprofit company she co-founded to produce films on women in order to provide positive role models for women and girls. This is after over 40 years teaching English, ethics, and women's studies in both high school and college, East and West Coast, most recently at Harvard Westlake in Los Angeles. So a really incredible career, Martha. And building off of Amy's point about how contemporary the issues are and how relevant a lot of these themes are today, I want to turn to Maria, who is the co-president of League of Women Voters of Los Angeles, and thank you for being with us tonight as well. I wanted to ask you, what fuels your desire to protect women's rights to vote, and what fueled you to get involved with League of Women Voters?
Thank you. Well, the League of Women Voters, our foremothers, of course, were the suffragettes. So the story goes that I was told that once the 19th Amendment was passed and women could vote, many of them proceeded to vote as their fathers and their husbands told them to. And so at that point, some of the former suffragettes, in particular Carrie Chapman Catt, regrouped decided the new mission will be indeed to go out into the community and inform and educate voters, the women in this case, to make, so they can be informed and make individual choices. In the 1970s, the League of Women Voters embraced all the men as well to join. And so since then, our mission has been to not just register voters, but to educate the community, nonpartisan, nonprofit we are. So it's not just women, it's basically everybody, in particular the disenfranchised. Indeed, today, for the bulk of the afternoon, I was down at Twin Towers at the men's county prison. There's about 16,000 men there, 9,000 whom are eligible to vote.
Wow.
And so I was in negotiations today with one of the commanders to see what we could do. They're not making it easy to go in.
Well,
and
what
register.
fuels you to do that? Because, I mean, I know that we all want that to be happening, but not all of us are going down to Twin Towers and doing what you're doing. So what is it that motivates you to do that?
Well, I mean, a democracy only works, right, if the demos participate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, indeed, this is, we have to encourage one another. Yeah, I teach university as well at Dominguez Hills, and that's another group, the youth that particularly actually in this election, they are inspired to mobilize and have their voice heard. That the Latino community in particular it's so exciting, people that have been here and just never bothered to become a citizen. We've been also registering voters at the naturalization ceremonies. So this is a particularly pivotal election, and it's mobilizing a lot of people to come out, and so we're very excited about that.
Agreed. Yeah, I think there's definitely a sense of urgency around this election, however people are feeling. I have a sense of how this room might be feeling. But, there's definitely a sense of urgency, and you see more people registering, more people getting involved. And again, I think that's really something that struck me from the film is that sense of urgency, that, being really willing to put your life on the line. And so I want to go to Zoe, who I could spend all day talking with, and in fact have some days, to talk with you a little bit about, your experience. You fasted for weeks to pass the Equal Rights Amendment, to get it ratified. You, like Inez, like other women who have fought for women's rights and women's equality, truly put your life on the line. What is it in you? What is it that you relate to in Inez? What motivates someone to put their life on the line in that way, to fight for a cause?
Well, it's something you can actually look up. It's a disease. It's a terrible disease. It's called divine discontent. And Du Bois talked about it. Dr. King talked about it. And many of us have terrible, incurable, relentless cases of divine discontent. I want to tell you everything. How long can you stay? There are two things I really want to impart. It's very hard to enliven people to vote. As you said, they voted the way their husbands told them to. And if they didn't, they actually were not taken to the polling place. But in Great Britain, a young lady gave her life away, Emily Davison, at a racetrack. She literally threw herself in front of the king's horse to demonstrate the importance of giving women the vote. And what happened recently, in the last 20 years, was a great interest in her life, and it was purported to inspire people to vote, because a woman had died for them to vote.
Yeah.
So our hope is, and how proud are we about this, Blanchard Hall, we could drive there tonight. It needs a plaque. Lindsay's getting a call from me tomorrow about that. We need a plaque at Blanchard Hall to memorialize her speech. And we need a plaque at Good Samaritan Hospital where she died. And then we need to make it clear that every woman needs to vote for women's issues.
Yes.
I'm certain no one here will be surprised to hear me say that a great heroine of mine said, women's rights are human rights. And I am hoping that Inez and the distribution of this film through the generosity of Martha to schools, libraries, colleges, grade schools, churches, everywhere, we're going to inspire people to understand the price that was paid for them to vote. Now, another thing I just can't resist, because Lindsay asked me about my life. I am obsessed with the founder of the National Women's Party, Alice Paul. I became obsessed with her mostly because she and I see eye to eye. She was a terrible, grumpy bitch of a lady. And every time I read a story about how wicked she was and heartless, I think, oh, I just love this woman. So you must know that when she fell on the ground at Blanchard Hall, and there's recording, we have 8 hours of Alice speaking, Be Still My Heart, and she is contacted and they say, well, Inez has fallen to the ground and she's in the hospital. She had pernicious anemia, she had rotten teeth, she had tonsillitis. You knew her energy was down. And Alice said, well, can't we just scrape her together and take her to the next speaking event in Arizona? Now you know why I love Alice. Anyway, I've had such a good time learning about Inez that I can't resist one last lick of a naughty story. So after she and Eugene were married on the boat, they walked to the balcony and threw their rings in the ocean because they did not believe in monogamy. So I just, in case you're wondering if she's your kind of girl.
Are we ready for a feature?
See, and you thought history was boring. It wasn't boring at all.
Thank you.
So, Amy, what does it feel like? I feel like, being part of movements and I just was at the DNC convention watching Hillary give this incredible speech, and so being present to moments like that, there's a feeling when you're experiencing it that helps you never forget what it feels like, right? But you are actually delivering her words. Like, how do you feel when you're taking these words that have truly changed the course of history for women in America that, Inez really represented? How do you feel delivering them?
Before I take on any person who lived, I meditate on them and I ask their spirit. And what you can think whatever you think about that, but that's my process. It's really important to me that I feel that it's not only okay with them, but that I'm being asked to bring their words back to life, as it were, in a different way and through my own filter, but as clearly as possible to remove that filter and let it be their words coming through with as much of their spirit as I can muster. And so, thank you.
Did a beautiful job.
Thank you. So when I heard about Inez over a year ago at a National Women's History Project event, where I won this button, this little brooch, and went, I'm going to wear this while I'm playing someone historical. I was so inspired that then I meditated on her, and then I was doing a one-woman show at the time around the world, and I put that speech in, her speech in that show when I felt like I had permission. So for me, I was back there. It's so important to me to be that channel and to feel the weight of all the women that she carried, and all the women right now, still 2016, fighting for a voice, just to live, just to feed their children, just to be seen as human. And so for me, that's what I do. I'm not a politician, I'm an actor. And that's how I make my voice heard in politics, is to bring art, to bring a story to life. So it feels like an honor.
That's really incredible. And Martha, you made that happen for Amy, this powerful experience that she's having by telling these stories. You've given her that gift, so it's just incredible that you have. How does it feel for you to be able to deliver? I mean, this might be, for some of us, the first time we're ever hearing about Inez Milholland. So how does it feel, and what has your experience been on this journey? What has it been like to help bring her story to life, especially in this moment in time where the voice of women and the women's vote is being spoken a lot about, and really is in the forefront of a lot of the headlines in our news and things like that. What does it feel like to bring her story to life?
I just wanted to start with a quotation from the great late Gerda Lerner, who basically started women's history, I don't know, many decades ago. And she said, "Women's history is our right. It's our right to know this history." And I met her many years ago, and therefore I became absorbed with women's history, particularly suffrage history. And it has happened over and over and over again that when audiences leave learning their history, feeling their history, and they thank me, and they say, I will always vote now. I never knew this. I feel terrible. No one ever told me about this. And they shake, and it's just so moving for me to share it. And it's not my film. It's our film. It's Inez's film. It's ours. It's our right to know this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's the great joy that I have.
Well, and you're certainly making it everybody's right and privilege to do this, as Zoe said, through your generosity to share this film. And so I want to thank you for that gift as well. Maria, I'm an action kind of person. I love talking about things, and I love exchanging ideas and theories, but I need things to do. I mean, I have lots to do, don't get me wrong, but I love having things to do. So in your experience helping to educate people on the vote and what goes into, the very long ballot we'll be looking at, for example, in November, what are some of the things that people can be doing to help educate people about their right to vote and about the vote that's coming up this year?
Well, indeed it is a long, complicated ballot. The League of Women Voters has the voter guide, has Voter's Edge, available online for all of the public, that helps to
And what's that? Tell us what that's about.
It helps deconstruct the ballot measures, right, so that everybody will understand. We've been inundated with requests to go out and do pros and cons in the community. Come on down, join the league as a volunteer. We'll help train you. Everybody is asking for, for speakers to come out. There was one more thing actually I wanted to say.
Go ahead, go for it.
Well, it was that, it's amazing, one thing is actually to extend the franchise to women, right? To extend the franchise to everybody. But another thing is actually to support issues, right, that support equal rights for everybody. And women in particular, right now, have a huge gender disparity in pay that impacts not just the women, it impacts families, since about 40% of families are female supported. And I think a lot of our consciousness indeed needs to be, energy needs to be put to that, you know, one thing is a vote, the other thing is actually all of the policies that indeed create complete equality. Right now, the Congress is at an all-time high of 20% women, all-time high, right?
Who's out there that's going to run? Raise your hand if you're going to run for office. Okay.
Run.
All right. Who's thinking about it? All right. We got a couple of those. All right. They say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they say that women need to be asked about 9 times to think about running for office before they actually do it. So all y'all consider yourselves asked. You need to run for office. Okay. Back to you, Maria.
I mean, there's a variety of different suggestions right now that women should be asking for raises more often, that they should be negotiating their pay more often. All of the actions that perhaps women should be doing themselves, right? As opposed to perhaps another structural level, right, of more transparency in pay, more job sharing, where they have in other countries. I used to live in New Zealand, where you did job sharing as well when you had to take care of your family members. That throughout up until this point, right, all of women's issues, family issues, were, you know, had been marginalized, right? I mean, they weren't front and center to the patriarchy. And now perhaps, you know, clearly it's time, right, to address those issues. Yeah.
Truly. Zoe, one of the things that struck me about Inez's story is the very many lenses through which she looked at her life and the intersectionality of so many issues. You know, she was a member of NAACP. Right. She's a woman under 30. She's fighting for women's rights. She's talking about, you know, pay equity and some of the issues that we heard in Amy's delivery of her speech that day here in the Los Angeles area. So, talk to me a little bit about, you know, intersectionality today and how, you know, we can take the lessons of Inez and how she looked at all of these different issues through the lens of feminism, and how can we apply that today? 30 seconds, go. No, I'm kidding.
Excellent. 30 seconds. I can't believe I'm actually going to say this. My mother would love it, and I've never said anything my mother loved before. I finally get to cancel out her vote. She's in heaven and she can't vote. Everything old is new again. It's astounding to me. I know Dr. Crenshaw and her paper on intersectionality is a lightning rod for people. But if you knew the life of Inez, and what the Heterodoxy Club did, these genius women who founded ACLU, who were part of founding NAACP. I'll be there in a minute. 3 black lesbians founded Black Lives Matter. You need to know that. I was just at a banner raising at a Unitarian church in Long Beach on Sunday, and they were shocked that the banner had been vandalized. Women stood in the rain, in the snow, 17 months, and their headquarters was across the street. And they would see, Maud's banner just got ripped, and somebody runs across the street and mounts a new banner. And these were hand-sewn. You know, one of my favorite pieces, it's only this big in the New York Times, about the women heckling. And I've heckled. There is provenance to what we do. They did it longer, they did it braver, they were smarter. On August 27th, 1920, Miss Paul, who refused to go to all the hoopla, because she knew the vote was just a step on the way to equality. For her, it was not the 19th Amendment. By the way, thank you, Google, for doing absolutely nothing today for Women's Equality Day after I watched Dancing Pineapples for 2 weeks. Anyway, she got up out of bed. She went down the road to American University. She got 3 law degrees, put together a council of people, including, we are guessing, Crystal Eastman and some judges, and wrote the Equal Rights Amendment. And on her 92nd birthday, when Mrs. Ford was phoning her up to say, "Happy birthday, Alice," she said, "By the way, couldn't you talk to your husband about that ERA?" In other words, we keep reinventing and reinventing, and it's intoxicating when you find out there's lineage here. There's real legacy here. I am the daughter of this movement, and it gives it great meaning to understand that Inez was a practitioner of intersectionality 96 years ago. How many years ago? It's really thrilling to know that, oh, my mother would love it. Everything old is new again.
It's true. Very true. Well, I could listen to you all for hours, but I'm told I must share you with our audience. So we invite everyone to continue to mix and mingle, but first and foremost, let's give our panel a hand, and thank you all so much for being here to share with us. And I want to thank everyone who came tonight for participating, all of our sponsors and co-partnering organizations. I want to thank everyone who contributed to the content of tonight, both in terms of our film and our discussion and the PSA, but in terms of the sharing that will happen as we go out. It's only good if we take this outside of this room and continue to live this energy in this moment that we're experiencing. So please do that. Please get to know each other, and thank you all. Happy Women's Equality Day. Thank you.